Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is February 17th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. On Friday, February 17th, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, is in Ukraine on a working visit. This is reported by Ukrinform with reference to NOS. Prime Minister Rutte is in Kyiv for a visit. He visited the Wall of Remembrance in the Ukrainian capital this morning, where he laid a wreath. A meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky is scheduled for later today, the report says. Photo, Jeroen Akkermans. It is noted that the last time the Prime Minister of the Netherlands visited the city was in July last year. As reported, in July, Prime Minister Mark Rutte of the Netherlands visited the war-affected settlements in Kyiv region, including Irpin, Bucha, and Borodianka. Photo, NOS. Russian troops changed tactics in Donetsk direction and reduced the number of night attacks. The enemy somewhat changed its tactics in this direction and stopped attacking our positions at night. Over the past 2 days, the number of assaults in this direction varies from 3 to 4. Instead, during the day, the enemy uses artillery very powerfully. Yesterday, the invaders used artillery 223 times in Donetsk direction, and there were 16 assaults in the area of Volodar and Marinka, Oleksiy Dmitrashkivsky, the head of the Joint Press Center of the Defense Forces of Tavria area, said during the nationwide news telethon. He added that the enemy is also using aviation actively. In general, all attacks were repelled yesterday and at night. No enemy advance is observed there, he said. According to Dmitrashkivsky, if earlier the enemy constantly opened fire and sent reconnaissance, sabotage, and assault groups, now the enemy is recovering at night, replenishing its reserves. At the same time, he believes that the enemy will continue offensive attempts. Read also, Ukrainian forces repel enemy attacks near 16 settlements. Will they continue? I think so, but their actions have drastically changed. They no longer have the capabilities with which they started assault and offensive in this direction. In my opinion, they need time to recover so that they can attack in full force. I think full-fledged attack, will happen in May-June at least, but the enemy will constantly disturb this direction since they received such a task from their so-called president, the spokesman emphasized. Within the search and rescue operation in Turkey, a combined team of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine removed 136 piles of rubble and retrieved the bodies of 58 victims. Over the past day, Ukrainian rescuers examined 16 destroyed buildings, 454 have been examined since the beginning of the operation, and removed 9 piles of rubble, 136, since the beginning of the operation, the press service of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine informs. The employees of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine provided medical assistance to 13 people, including 1 child, since the beginning of the operation. Over the past day, the rescuers retrieved the bodies of 3 victims, 58 people, including 9 children, since the beginning of the operation. As reported, the employees of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, who arrived in Turkey to carry out rescue operations, are working in one of the most difficult areas of the city of Antakya, Sector R. Photo, State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The United States considers Crimea to be a territory of Ukraine, transformed by Russia into a huge military base, and will not contradict the decision of the Ukrainian side to attack Russian military installations on the peninsula. U.S. Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland said this during an online discussion organized by the Carnegie Endowment on Thursday, an Ukrinform correspondent reported. I'm not going to prejudge where the Ukrainians choose to fight or how they choose to deal with Crimea over the short term, medium term, or long term. We recognize Crimea as Ukraine, the U.S. Under-Secretary of State said. She noted that when the Russian occupation authorities captured Crimea, they immediately resorted to massive human rights abuses, persecution of Crimean Tatars and other people who did not agree with the occupation. In addition, Russia turned the peninsula into a massive military installation, which was used for a large-scale offensive on the rest of Ukraine. Therefore, according to Nuland, the Russian military bases in Crimea should be considered legitimate targets for the armed forces of Ukraine. Russia's military installations in Crimea are legitimate targets, Ukraine is hitting them, and we are supporting that, the official said. At the same time, Nuland noted that Ukraine will not be safe unless Crimea is at a minimum demilitarized. In addition, the U.S. Undersecretary of State noted that Washington is considering the possibility of supplying Ukraine with not only the weapons needed on the battlefield for victory now, but also for further deterrence of the Russian Federation after the war ends. Air defense systems for Ukraine will be produced in the Czech Republic. This was announced by Deputy Minister of Defense of the Czech Republic Daniel Blaskovec, Ukrinform reports with reference to Radio Prague International. The Netherlands will pay for the assembly of hundreds of specially modified Toyota off-road vehicles equipped with 2 rapid-firing machine guns capable of hitting drones and other targets. Aleš Vojtěch, director of the Intergovernmental Defense Cooperation Agency, said that Czech companies will also buy the necessary ammunition. The Ministry of Defense of the Czech Republic acts as an intermediary in the implementation of this project. This project resembles the modernization of 90 T-72 tanks, which is already underway. The necessary works are carried out by a Czech company, while the USA and the Netherlands jointly pay for the order. As reported, Czech PM Petr Fiala advocated further strengthening the diplomatic isolation of the Russian Federation and expanding sanctions against Russia over its aggression against Ukraine. Russian troops shelled at least 12 settlements in Kharkiv region over the past day. Over the past day, the Defense Forces units repelled Russian attacks in the areas of Kyiv and Sinkivka settlements. At least 12 settlements, in particular Vovchansk, Novominsk, Dvorykna, Kupiansk, Kyiv, and others, came under enemy fire, Ola Synhubov, head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, posted on Telegram. Read also, Ukrainian forces repel enemy attacks near 16 settlements in Vovchansk, the enemy used fighter aircraft and artillery. In Kupiansk, shelling damaged private houses, garages, and a car. Fires broke out. A 44-year-old woman was injured in the shelling of Veliky Berlik. She was hospitalized in moderate condition, Synhubov reported. As for the missile attacks on Kharkiv launched after 2300 hours on February 16, the workshops of an enterprise were damaged by a blast wave. Read also, Russian troops hit Kherson region 76 times in past day, killing 3 civilians as reported. 1 person was killed and 6 people were injured in Russian attacks on Vovchansk, Kharkiv region, on February 16. Photo, National Police. Russian troops have already killed 461 children and injured 923 children in its full-scale war against Ukraine. As of the morning of February 17, 2023, more than 1,384 children were killed and injured in Ukraine as a result of the full-scale armed aggression of the Russian Federation. According to the official information of the juvenile prosecutors, 461 children were killed and more than 923 children received injuries of various degrees of severity, the Prosecutor General's office posted on Telegram. The Prosecutor General's office emphasized that the indicated numbers are not final as the efforts are ongoing to establish casualties in the areas of hostilities, in temporarily occupied and liberated territories. Most children were killed and injured in Donetsk region, 444, Kharkiv region, 272, Kyiv region, 123, Kherson region, 87, Zaporizhia region, 84, Mykolaiv region, 83, Chernihiv region, 68, Luhansk region, 66, Dnipropetrovsk region, 64. The Russian army damaged 3,126 educational institutions in Ukraine, and 338 of them are completely destroyed. As of February 2023, 347 children are considered missing amid Russia's military aggression in Ukraine. Another team of Iranian instructors arrived in temporarily occupied Luhansk to train the Russian military in the use of combat drones. As the Luhansk Regional Military Administration posted on Facebook, part of 200 Russian healthcare staff who will work in military hospitals, have also arrived in Luhansk and Lysychansk. In temporarily occupied Vovchansk, the invaders turned the town's central multidisciplinary hospital into a hospital for the seriously wounded and forced employees of budget institutions to donate blood urgently. Most of the healthcare facilities in the temporarily occupied territories of Luhansk region are closed to civilians. People who need hospitalization are sent to neighboring regions of the Russian Federation. The other day, 20 civilians were sent to Rostov region for scheduled treatment. As reported, according to Serhiy Haidai, head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, the Russians have intensified their activities near Crimea and Bilohorivka in recent weeks. The Russian Federation has built up tens of thousands of its troops in the territory of Luhansk region. Over the past day, February 16, Russian troops attacked Kherson region 76 times, killing 3 civilians and injuring 7 more. Russian invaders attacked Kherson region 76 times, using MLRS, mortars, artillery, tanks, and UAVs, the Kherson Regional Military Administration posted on Telegram. It is noted that the Russian army attacked Kherson city 9 times, again targeting the residential neighborhoods. The invaders hit a commercial port and residential buildings. 3 people were killed and 7 more received injuries of various degrees of severity in the Russian shelling of Kherson region yesterday. Read also, 5 civilians killed, 10 more injured in Russian shelling of Donetsk region. As reported, the armed forces of Ukraine repelled Russian attacks near 16 settlements over the past day. Over the past day, the enemy fired 41 missiles of various types at the territory of Ukraine, including 5 modified S-300 air missiles at Kharkiv. Over the past day, the enemy fired 41 missiles of various types at the territory of our country, including 5 modified S-300 air missiles at Kharkiv. Our defenders shot down 16 missiles, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine posted on Facebook. In addition, the occupiers launched 24 airstrikes and more than 50 MLRS attacks. Civilians were killed and injured. As reported, containers with oil products were damaged and a fire broke out in Kyiv region following a Russian missile attack on the night of February 16. Today we were talking about those news. Dutch PM arrives in Kyiv. Enemy changes tactics, reduces number of night attacks in Donetsk direction. Ukrainian rescuers in Turkey remove 136 piles of rubble, retrieve 58 bodies. Nuland, Russian military installations in Crimea are legitimate targets for armed forces of Ukraine. Czechia to produce air defense systems for Ukraine. Enemy strikes 12 settlements in Kharkiv region, using aircraft in Vovchansk. 1,384 children killed and injured in Ukraine due to Russian aggression. Iranian instructors arrive in Luhansk to train Russian military to operate drones. Russian troops hit Kherson region 76 times in past day, killing 3 civilians. General Staff, Russians fired 41 missiles at Ukraine yesterday.